Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you, dear viewers, and congratulations on the birth of our 8th Imam, Imam Ali Razawi. Welcome to a special edition of Ahlebait Time, where the topic of discussion today is the UN International Day of Peace. This is a live call-in show and the calls will be open later on in the show. And my name is Saarah Bokhari, I'm your host today. With me today, I'm honoured to have my two esteemed guests, Sayyid Ali Abbas Razawi and Father Nadim Nassar. Assalamu alaikum and welcome both to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So the topic of peace is something that, especially in the turn of the 21st century, has been a topic that's widely and a vast topic of discussion, and it's widely discussed across the world in the scene of international politics, across religions, and many different sections. So today we're here to discuss the International Day of Peace, which is yearly marked by the UN. Sayyid, can you shed some light on what exactly this UN International Day of Peace is, and what your organisation, Majlis Ulama, what the role it plays?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The United Nations International Day of Peace is a day that probably around about 1981, 1982 was commissioned by the United Nations, but it's quite low profile at the time. So basically it was only until about 2001 that they fixed a date, and they fixed the date to be the 21st of September. It's an initiative which is universal, it's something which all countries are meant to be participating in. And after the 2001, the 21st was fixed. We initially got involved last year. So last year what happened was that the Day of Peace was falling on a Friday, and again it's the Muslim day of peace and prayer and holidays. And so at that point, in London, a number of organizations, leading Muslim organizations in fact, came together, and we thought that, look, it's a really good opportunity for us to come together, to sit on the table, and to basically promote peace in a time where peace is needed. You see, Islam has been polarized in the media, there's a polarization which is going on, so we thought that, look, why don't we show the peaceful side of Islam, an Islam that for probably about 1,000 years has been living peacefully in the Middle East with Christians, with Jews, and with other religions. You know, it could date back to at least 1100 years ago, where Islam had very good ties with the Buddhist community in Afghanistan and the Hindu communities later on. So it's not always been about war, which is caused by religions. So nevertheless, leading organizations such as ourselves, the MCB, the MINAB, we all got together and we decided that, look, it's important for our centers to celebrate this day. And again, we extended it later on to the wider community. But initially, the event was because of the Friday for Muslims specifically, is what we were told. Man Ki-moon endorsed it, and at the time, a lot of our centers came on board. And what we essentially did was open up our doors on that Friday to Interfaith. So after the Jummah prayers, the doors were opened. People from all walks of life came. And I remember last year myself, I was in Husseini Mission, which is in West London. And it was amazing to see Sikhs and Buddhists and Hindus and Christians and Jews. And the reason why I mentioned them is that I've never seen a Sikh interacting with a Jew or a Hindu interacting with a Christian in such a way. And everybody was interacting and getting on together. It was an excuse to share common humanity in a mosque. But the beauty was that everybody lit candles, and it signified that each one of us are equal candles. In the eyes of God, all of humanity is equal. And the one thing that we share is that common humanity. So roll on, very briefly, roll on this year. And this year's falling on a Saturday. Saturday generally is a Sabbath anyway, and the Shabbat is happening also on that Saturday. So it's a very exclusive period of the year for Jews. So we thought, why not help them and help ourselves? And in fact, we decided to do over 3 days. Friday for Muslims, Saturday for Jews, and Sunday for Christians. So all three Abrahamic faiths got together, and they've now decided that, look, we need to promote this peace. Hundreds of countries, and in the essence of last year, the ethos really was twinning centers. So for example, you had a center in the United States, which was twinned to a center here. You had a center in Nigeria, and Nigeria is honestly leading the way, because Nigeria has Christians and Muslims living side by side, despite what you hear in the media, but it's quite peaceful. In Egypt, we had Muslims and, again, Christians celebrating, and even in Najaf. The ulama, the maraja, they sent a statement to say that, look, we're one common humanity, we need to get along together, live on this world. So there was a five-a-side football match in Baghdad, bringing together two religions. And I think at the time the bishop of Baghdad also contributed to that. And it was something which was fascinating, something that was new. Apparently over 80 centers in Pakistan held this as well, which is quite good. And so you've got Iraq, you've got Pakistan, you've got India. So it was something which was global, it wasn't restricted. And it was from the grassroots level, which is good. It wasn't something which has been imposed by politicians, but it was something that the people took and they thought, this is a very good initiative. So essentially that's what it is. And this year as well, we're going to hold the same events. People coming together, different walks of life, meeting and greeting. And essentially it's just that cup of tea with one another that breaks those barriers. So this is why I think that it's important, and this is why we, as an organization, Majlis Ulama, that represents the Shia community in Europe, is also getting involved in this initiative.
That's a beautiful explanation. It's amazing to see that this really is a global campaign, like you're saying, every corner of the world, whether it's Iraq, Pakistan, Nigeria, like you said. And I find it interesting that you said Nigeria, that there you see people, Christians, Muslims, living alongside each other. And Father, I believe you're from Syria, that's your background.
Yes.
And you also are the founder of an organization that promotes a lot of interfaith work and naturally that promotes peace. So could you shed some light on what made you found this organization and what work do you involve yourself in to promote peace?
Well, we believe very much that education is a major way to break barriers, as Sayyid Ali said, and also to promote peace and also to defeat ignorance. For me, for the Awareness Foundation, we believe ignorance breeds fear.
Absolutely.
And fear breeds violence. And violence destroys communities. So if you want to go back to the roots of the problem, you have to tackle ignorance. And the Awareness Foundation is about education. And for the Peace Day, I was involved last year with Sayyid Ali. And we met in the Parliament in London, in the chapel, and we spoke and we promoted peace. And this year we are taking even further steps. And I hope even next year we can celebrate the Peace Day in Syria. Let's all pray for that. So at the moment, Syria is bleeding.
Yes.
And so is my heart. And it's awful to see my country being destroyed and people are being killed. And especially a lot of that in the name of religion,
Yes.
which is even worse. And that's what makes us, Sayyid Ali and I, more determined.
Yes.
For education, for awareness, for working together, that people should know about their faith first and then try to know about the others.
Absolutely. And it's amazing that you said that, because these situations that are going on, like you said, Syria, a lot of people are affected by it, and it ignites a flame within you to want to do something. And it's amazing this UN International Day of Peace is providing a platform for people,
Exactly.
like you said, at grassroots, to actually get involved, and even over a cup of tea, it's amazing the work that's happening. So before we go into some of the more perhaps controversial topics or aspects of peace, let's cover the basics. So I'd like to ask you both, in the respective religions, you're here with Christianity and Islam, what does peace mean? Is it a spiritual concept entirely? Is it an individual concept that must be conquered for an individual? Or is it something that we have to incorporate into our lives as a community? So to begin with, you say it.
Would you want to start?
No, please.
No, I think we were in a discussion 2 days ago, again on television, discussing the concept of peace. Now, what is it to be, or at the state of peace within Islam? Islam, people translate it as peace, salam,
Yes.
peace. So essentially, what is peace? And we concluded, if you remember, a couple of days ago on another TV channel, that essentially peace is a three-way process. It's three things. It's on three different levels. If we're living on this planet, we're affected in three different ways. The environment around us affects us. So you've got the nature. And a lot of times we forget this, the environment. We've got big cars, big engines, polluting, taking a lot of oil. And most wars at this day and age are really about economics. So that's one thing, abuse of the environment, and I think that that's very important. I don't think any religion teaches us to abuse this environment.
Yes.
You take human beings off the planet and you find absolute peace and bliss. And the minute you put human beings on the planet, you find disruption. So I think on one level it's our interactions with nature, with the physical world outside. I think the second stage, again, as we discussed, is society. Essentially, peace needs to be within society as well. There needs to be a stability and an equilibrium. And then finally, from society is within ourselves. So religion needs to cater for that, or essentially God has catered for that, three levels. So you have peace within yourself, it's manifest within your society. If you're calm within yourself, you'll find that you're calm, society will be calm with you.
Absolutely.
One man makes a difference, right? And you look throughout history and you see when somebody like Abraham, the prophet, comes forward and he brings this calmness, people are affected by it, whether it's Moses, whether it's Jesus, whether it's our prophet. I find that there's a calmness. You know, people's morality begins, their consciousness kind of awakens to the fact that there's a higher reality, and that brings peace. So it's the self, which is manifest in society, and essentially around us. So why is Islam called Islam? Yes, submission to the Creator. Why is it that it's a religion of peace, essentially? Is because we've been created for peace. What is peace? Peace is an equilibrium.
Yeah.
Peace that's based upon justice. You know, go back to the Greeks, you find Aristotle talks about ethics. He says that the best virtue that you can find is justice, because it gels together everything else. If God is merciful, it's because justice acquires that He's merciful. So if you can switch it around the other way, a lot of times we say, why is God just? Because He's merciful.
Yeah.
Why is God, for example, just? Because He's loving? No, switch it around the other way. Justice means putting a rightful thing in its place. Therefore, it means that if we love something, it is because we're putting it in its rightful place. If we're showing mercy towards something, it's because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Principles. So the entire universe, therefore, is based upon the right thing, a balance. And as it says in the Quran, when Allah speaks to the people, He says, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. You know, we've created you as a nation in the middle, but essentially in balance. You've been created not this way, not that way, but just there. But that when the focal point is hit, you realize human beings get to a state of peace. You know, all of these religions, why do they teach mysticism? Why do they teach spirituality? What was the Buddha teaching? The idea of removing negative suffering, pain and suffering within ourselves. How do you do that? When you balance thousands of emotions inside of you. Sometimes you can be seen as completely fine, but inside there's a turmoil going on. Why? Because all of those emotions are in disbalance.
Yeah.
The purpose then, just as you have vitamins to balance your levels in your body, in the same way your soul needs to have balance. Justice brings about that balance, but when that balance is brought about, then peace emanates. So in this way, Islam is that religion that says, look, the purpose within our theology for creation is understanding the divine, because the divine is perfect. So man, by his nature, being created in the image of God, the surah of Allah, means what? Physically? No, God becomes physical, He ceases to become God, He's restricted. Absolute God is what? Unlimited. So what is it that human beings have, which is the surah of God? Is the akhlaq of Allah, is the ethics and the morals and the fitrah of Allah. So all of those things about God, kindness, compassion, inherently we understand good. If somebody was to ask, and this is a debate in philosophy, do human beings know what goodness is, or is it subjective? No, every human being will know, for example, lying is bad, cheating is bad, hitting someone is bad. Whether you're taken from the mountains or you go into a city, what is it that tells you? Your child, 4-year-old, hits another child. It feels bad. Why? Inherently, it's his fitrah, which is connected to the fitrah of Allah. So all of these names, asma and sifat of God, which is found within us, are dormant, needs to be balanced. When it's balanced, then peace comes.
Find peace, yeah. And that's a beautiful answer. And actually, we're going to come back to the issue of justice and peace, like you were saying, they're intertwined there. And Father, I'd like to ask you the same question. In Christianity, what does peace mean to you?
I don't fully agree with Sayyid Ali. Justice is not the highest principle for me, and how I understand Christianity. The ultimate principle in Christianity is love.
Okay.
Love encompasses justice, encompasses mercy. But what I would say, would agree with Sayyid Ali, is everything should be right. And the right is the righteousness, not the justice. Justice and mercy are both in balance in God, but not in balance with us. Because of that, Christianity believes that God is love. And St. John says, God is love. God does not only love. And God is not loving. And God is not lovable. And God is not lovely. God is love. When we put God, and a synonym to that is, St. John meant it to be synonyms and interchangeable, the word Allah and the word mahabbah.
Yes.
Love and God are interchangeable because God is love. So the culture of God, the culture in the essence, in the heart of God, is the balance between justice and mercy comes from the fact that both are under the umbrella of love. And that what we reflect in our lives as we live in peace.
Yes.
Because when Jesus was asked, what are the two, what is the best commandment, the best law in the Jewish law? And he looked and he said, the two best commandments are love your God with all your strength and all with your heart, all your mind and everything in you. Love God. And the second one is like the first. Love your neighbor like yourself. So here we come to meet Sayyid Ali and I, and we say the peace or the love is within me. That I have to find. I can't love my neighbor if I can't find the love within me. I can't live in peace with my neighbor if inside me I'm in turmoil.
Yes.
And that when the balance is not right, then we come to challenge, like what Sayyid Ali said. And justice is in the futra, in the basic element of humanity.
Primordial nature.
Yes, primordial nature. But today, if I look at Syria, I feel that there are people who believe with all their hearts that for the sake of Islam, they are killing other people. And they think this is justice. So back to the basics of the balance is not right here.
Yes.
So what do we do to bring the balance back, to restore it in order to have the peace? So the peace is a consequence of love, the consequence of harmony between justice and mercy.
That's two very beautiful answers, and thank you both. So we've just to recap that, in Christianity we're saying that there's the balance, in both religions even, there's a mutual agreement that there's a balance that the human being has to achieve within themselves. There's just a slight difference in interpretation as to how you achieve that balance. And that brings us on to the next point.
I think you understood my point actually. Let me just explain that further. I think
Please
justice,
elaborate.
what he was looking at, is from a very Christo-Judaic basis. When we talk about justice within Islam, it isn't just that fact that I'm doing something out of obligation. But the justice of God encompasses, as you said, God is love. Wadud, God is Wadud. He is love. He's a manifest. He is absolute love. In the same way as absolute mercy. In the same way as absolute giver. In the same way He's absolute in everything and is infinite. So when we talk about justice, that's why I mentioned Aristotle at the beginning. Aristotle, when he talks about justice, he says justice is the gelling agent that brings everything together. Why? Because it gives us a sense of responsibility and all-encompassingness. So essentially when we talk about justice, it's not just the justice that maybe within the Judaic Christian tradition of justice, which is something which is not emotional, it's something which is just your duty, no. Your duty encompasses love and affection. And that's something which is important, that's the difference. Because we could do something out of justice as a qadi, as a judge. No, that's not the justice we're talking about. The justice of God is that justice which is done based upon love and compassion. The justice is doing the right thing or feeling in the right way. So when human beings becomes an encompassment of that justice of God, what you're essentially saying is that all of the infinite characteristics and the names of God are in balance in you.
And that what Sayyid Ali said, the justice is based on love. What I said is love is the umbrella of justice.
Okay.
So it's
intertwined.
Similar difference, yeah.
Manifestations. Kasrat fil wahdat, wahdat fil kathra.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. So the essence of actually that conversation is actually brings me to my next point, that a lot of people feel that religion, because of the differences, can't actually work together to bring peace. If religion has a different interpretation of what justice is, how can you unite in actually bringing out that peace actively? So what would you say to someone, both of you, I'd like to ask both of you, how would you answer someone who says religion and their differences means that you can't actually unite, you can't make a difference, and what is your religion's perspective of that?
No, I think that would be a wrong interpretation. Because world religions teach the way of the fitrah, We may have a technical difference in terms of terminologies and the definitions, but terminologies and definitions don't make the person. The 90% of the people are not looking for terminologies and a description of what it means. Essentially what we're talking about is the same thing. Is that compassion? Is that love? Is that movement towards the divine? Yes. The movement to the divine for everyone is based upon love, because Allah loves them. As it says in the Quran, يُحِبُّهُمْ. He loves them. Who does He love? Mankind. And they love Him. Yeah. So in that sense, it is, and again, Father Nadim is completely correct in the idea that love is a movement towards God. You cannot move towards the divine without that. What pushes you to travel is love. What pushed Sayyidul Shuhada to do what he did is love.
It's the engine of the spirit.
It's the exactly.
Of
it's
the
an
passion.
It's an emotion that only human beings have to the maximum ability, and each one of us agrees with that. So we say 90% is based on the fitrah. Good is good. Responsibility is responsibility. Justice is justice. Love is love. And human beings have the capacity to love more than anybody else does, more than anything in existence, whether it be the angels or whether it be the animals. Because human beings, and we could go into the entire bab of ishq if we wanted to, but the fact is that human beings are different from all of creation, because human beings have the ability to love the most. There's two things required, and now that we're on the topic of love. Yeah. One is the free will to love, and the other one is knowledge of that which you are loving. The angels have that, right? They have the free will to love and they have knowledge of God. But what is it that in our tradition, and our tradition is different from Sunni tradition. Sunni tradition says that the angels are the highest level. We don't believe that. We believe that man is at the highest level. Okay. The prophets are at the highest level. Why is man at the highest level? Because man's capacity to understand God in all of the different levels of reality are greater. We can comprehend one aspect, as the mystics say, that the angels can't, and that's pain. Angels don't have pain. Love intensified only comes when you have faragha, separation and pain. That's why all of the mystical poetries and all of love poetry deals with the separation of pain. Yeah. And the idea is that when this pain comes, there's a yearning that goes towards God. Angels don't have that. They're already at that maqam qurb. They're close to God. But we, in terms of our separation, why was it necessary for Adam to come to the earth? So that he could feel the completion, and the completion lies in that yearning towards God, maximizes love. So I don't think that there's any difference. If we are all related to Adam, we have that same fitrah. And you'll see that even within Islam's golden era, you found Jews, Christians, Muslims living Muslims and Christians living side by side. So it isn't something it doesn't happen. No, people talk about wars in the 20th century. Wars in the 20th century were because of secular rulers and despots and dictators. Wars have not been created on the basis of religion. Even now within Syria, the war is not essentially a war of religion. It may be used as it, but it's a war of interest. It's a war of domination. There's no religion there. Yeah. Religion doesn't tell you to desecrate somebody's grave. Religion doesn't tell you to dig someone's grave up. Religion doesn't tell you to chop the head of a 9-year-old girl. I was looking at an article yesterday. There's a Shia girl, they cut her head off. 9 years old, they cut her head off. That's not religion. Or killing bishops in Latakia, that's not religion. Not under my name anyway, and I don't think that under Father Nadim that's going to be happening, no. So no, I do think that religions can live together harmoniously, peacefully, in the way that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, you look at his Kufa, you had Jews, you had Christians, you had Muslims, and the Imam said, I'll judge the Jews by the Torah. Obviously he understood the Torah to judge them. Yeah. Christians, Bible, Muslims, the Quran. And he said, look, you live your life according to your rules, you live your life and we'll live our life according to our rules. If there's an issue amongst us three, then we'll take it to a higher level and we'll resolve those issues. But religion essentially teaches peace. And so therefore it's within all of our religions to sit down peacefully, to discuss things and to move forward. Why? Because our commonality is reaching the divine.
Yeah. So Father, similar question to you, but could you shed some light on some parables, some stories that we can take an example from in Christianity, where the promotion of putting these differences aside is put into practice?
Actually, differences are essential in religion and in the universe, in our lives, in the creation. If God wanted us to be all the same, why would He create us in such a huge, wonderful diversity? Is it a mistake? God made a mistake that we are different? Well, hasha lillah, God forbids. God did not make a mistake that He created us in such a diversity. He meant to teach us a big lesson, how to move towards him through our diversity. And that is incredibly important. And I want to illustrate that with how Jesus Christ lived, not what he only taught, how he lived. The Jews in his time they considered the Sumerians, the Samaritans, their enemies, because they believed that the Samaritans married outside the Jewish faith, so they were contaminated. And they rejected them. And there was an area in Palestine, it's called Sumeria. Sumeria was considered enemy. So the Jews, when they traveled in the land, they had to go through Sumeria. So what did they do? They went around Sumeria so that they were not in contact with the Samaritans. When Jesus decided to travel, he did not go around Sumeria, he went right through Sumeria. Wow. And not only that, he was thirsty. So he went to a well and found a Samaritan woman. Not only an enemy, but a woman at that time. We're talking about 2,000 years ago. Yeah. And he said to her, "Give me water to drink." And she looks at him, "Is this madness or what?" And he said, "Do you know what you're doing, sir? First of all, you are a man. Second, you are a Jew. Third, I am a woman, and you are asking me to give you water. How many barriers are you breaking with one question, one request?" He was breaking barriers of centuries of hatred, enmity, barriers, everything. So all what it needs for peace is the courage to break the barrier which everybody is looking at, staring at, but nobody has the courage to touch it or challenge it. So why are our prophets from the beginning until now, we have great prophets? Because they understood how to challenge these barriers in the society and are not afraid to point at the barriers. When Jesus called Matthew to be his disciples, you know what Matthew did? He was a tax collector. And a tax collector at that time, he was below the lowest rank of the society. Why? Because a tax collector was corrupt in the Roman Empire. What they did, the tax collectors, they bribed the empire to appoint them tax collectors. And then they oppressed the people and sucked their money out to cover their bribery. So total corruption. He looked at Matthew and said, "Follow me." And Matthew dropped everything and followed him. He did not shy away from calling somebody everybody else looks at and finds no. Here comes the man of the moment to challenge that and say, the one who you all despise, I am going to call him to be a disciple. Wow. So it's not about only teaching, Saarah. The peace needs courageous moments to take decisions and challenge these barriers.
And not just that, it's also living, like you said, in action.
In action.
Said it's not teaching, but
Exactly.
it's actually leading by example and
Absolutely.
showing other people. Like how you said in one story we learned there that Jesus is breaking how many barriers? Like you're saying, like
a man,
a male, a Jew,
a gender, an ethnic background, religious barriers, everything.
And it's amazing, like you said, that's a very inspiring story, and thank you for sharing. I do believe for the callers, the number is now on the screen. So if you do want to call in, you have any questions, comments, or queries regarding the topic of discussion today on the UN International Day of Peace, then please do call in and share your opinions. So swiftly moving on, you mentioned Syria, and Syria has actually been mentioned a few times in this show today. And obviously, it's an issue that is
It's on our heart at the moment.
It's in our hearts. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. It's upsetting for a
Absolutely.
lot of people, and it's also at the forefront of a lot of conflict in the world. And often conflict can be quite the opposite to peace and the aim that we're trying to achieve here. Now, when we look at news articles, you look at the media, you see many a time it's religion is like very subtly but depicted there as a cause of these problems. You'll see, you know, Sunni group does this, Shia group does this, Christian this. You'll see a lot of labels being thrown around. And a lot of people often feel that the majority are speaking on behalf of the rest of us. Now the rest of us the minority, are speaking on behalf of the rest of us. The majority of us might believe in this peace, but how do we actively counter this within our own communities? Is it through interfaith work, etc.? Can you both again shed some light on what we can do at a grassroots level, like you said, which is often the most effective in order to make a difference and get our voices louder than the rest of them?
You start off on this one.
Well, in the case of Syria, I have to say I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed, deeply disappointed, because from before I say that, I want to say, when we lose our critical ability to face each other with love, respect, and understanding, we can't live together. So we have to be able to look at each other and be critical. And we do that a lot, Sayyid Ali and I. So what I want to say is, I say with love, respect, and understanding to the Sunni world, as a Christian, as a priest from Syria, I am very disappointed. I'm deeply disappointed, because there is almost silence about what is being done in the name of the Sunni in Syria, in the name of Islam. For the West cannot differentiate between Sunni and Shia. The West, Islam is Islam.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Sunni or Shia, who cares in the West? They don't know their own faith, let alone to know other faiths. So whatever happens in the Muslim world, it's Islam. So it's a one color. But I'm saying there has not been done enough to highlight what the majority want or the majority think. It's okay to say, and it's nice to say, well, it's a tiny minority hijacking religion and making these atrocities. Well, fine. Where is the majority? Mm-hmm. Why is nobody standing up to them and say, enough is enough? Where are the millions of Sunni in the world to stand up and say, these people do not represent us. These people do not, what they are doing is not what Islam orders us to do and the way Islam wants us to do. The Muslims are being, I'm not only defending Christians, they are doing that even to Sunni, yeah. Let alone the Shia and the Druze and the Christians. We are being persecuted in Syria as Christians for the first time, since the Roman Empire. For the first time, we are backward in the 21st century to being persecuted in our own land. Syria was a Christian country for 700 years before Islam started. Mm-hmm. And how can we be treated as if we are imported from outside? Yeah. Peace begins when we understand how to stand up to the right, to the justice, to the love of the country. We as Syrians, we all join in our love for our country. But in action, I am disappointed.
In action. Would you suggest for somebody, a lot of people will say that, they hear the news, they see what's going on, they see the atrocity. Mm-hmm. In what active way do you suggest, and from your own community, has there been a movement where people are denouncing this?
Not enough. Not enough, because these atrocities are happening every day. I don't know how many Christians Syria lost. Now, we were about 12 to 14% in Syria, Christians. I don't know how many,
It's quite a
5%,
large percentage.
6%.
Yeah.
Iraq lost 90% of Christianity in Iraq, 90%. I'm sorry,
It's
the
heartbreaking.
Muslims around the world, every single Muslim is responsible. Because we have a saying in Arabic, and it's a Muslim, an Islamic saying. Al-samt shaytanun akhras. Those who are silent about atrocities are like a silent devil, a dumb devil. So when I see the wrong and I don't say anything about it, either I agree with it, or I'm too weak to do anything, and this is unacceptable. So where is the action? Actions are louder than words. And we as Christians, as well as the Shia, as well as the minorities, as well as the hijacked majority of Sunni in Syria, where are they? Why are they not standing up and saying a word of truth?
And it's responsibility, like you said, that responsibility heightens in situations like
Yes.
this, because we are all responsible. It is almost like our religion is under attack when
I'm
people
sorry,
are carrying
I'm
out this.
passionate about it, because
No, that's
when you see the
understandable.
atrocities taking place in Syria, the world has not seen such atrocities since the Second World War.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
Almost 100 years
beyond
ago,
the human imagination what is happening in Syria. I'm calling everybody to carry the responsibility. We are here because we feel the responsibility. We are doing what we can. But if everyone says, I'm doing what I can, then things will change. Definitely will change.
Definitely. Said, can you shed some light on what's your opinion on what the fathers just said?
No, I think it's completely correct in the sense that humanity needs to make that difference. And we know better than anybody else does, because we have a culture of Karbala, which is in our blood. Our nation has been oppressed for the last 1400 years, and from that 1400 years we've always risen to the challenge. In the 20th century in the Middle East, if there was anyone who was standing up, it was the Shias who were standing up. Whether it was Musa Sadr within Lebanon as a political movement, whether it was Baqir al-Sadr, his cousin in Iraq, you find in Syria, you find in Iran. In the 20th century you have seen from this oppression that at least we've learned a lesson, and that is to stand up. And this is why I believe that we have that culture of Karbala. You go throughout history and you see people betrayed their prophets. The Bani Israel killed their prophets. Wadi al-Salam is full of at least 30,000 prophets were buried there. Look at Palestine, look at all of those regions, you find prophets were killed upon killed. Look at the way they treated Jesus. This is something that took, look at the way that they dealt with our prophet. They left him in the Battle of Uhud and they ran away. It was only one time that Islam or humanity itself woke, and this is an issue for humanity, and that was in Karbala. Finally they became baligh, finally they became mature.
Yes.
Each one of those 72 men stood up and said, we will defend you, we will defend the truth. Regardless of who it was, there was a Christian there. Christians came to the support of Imam Hussein, the ethnic Jews were there, East Europeans were there, people from different cultures and backgrounds were there. So that's why we say that that was humanity which rose there. It took how long though? Over 5,000 years of civilization for that moment to come, where all of those religions and all of those backgrounds were together in one land standing up against oppression. They didn't want to fight, but they stood up against oppression. So it tells us that we also, if we're following that tradition, as Muslims, as followers of the Ahlebait, it is important for us to stand up against oppression on the basis of humanity, not on the basis of the fact that we're Muslim or we're Christian.
Yes.
Our responsibility is not just the Shias, because Imam Hussein alayhi salam didn't teach us that. He says our responsibility is to humanity. It's the connection of the heart, it's the sincerity that's important. You know, a lot of times you find that us as minority groups, we have events and stuff, we just do it for PR purposes. The sincerity is not there, it doesn't hit the hearts of the people. But look at somebody like Sayyid al-Shuhada. Look at the way that he was doing, right? 1400 years later, 25 million people coming to Karbala is a success sign that Hussein won that day. The world powers crushed him, 30,000. Where media blackout completely. If he's alive today, who commemorates in this way? In the 20th century, we've seen the likes of Lady Diana, a very good woman. How many people go outside of her grave today, or Mother Teresa, or any of, even Muslims? Take our examples, you know, the Maraja and the Ayatullahs and all the ulama. But when you look at Sayyid al-Shuhada, Arafah is coming. Last year, I remember, how many people? 3 million people. Ashura Day came, 5 million people. Arba'in came, Wikipedia, 25 million people, 18 million people, 15 million, record breaking for 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
Saddam tried to finish it. What pushes people to go there? The idea of justice. And that's why in the Shia world, at least, in the Muslim world, when justice or injustice is put on top of us, what do we shout out? Hayhat min nadhillah. Why? Because that's the saying of Sayyid al-Shuhada. So I think that we need to take that and we need to convert that. And regardless of who it is, and I agree, we need to stand up for Syria, at least solve the situation. You know, let's not go into the religious dynamics of it, but the fact is that if there's an oppression going on, wherever it is in the world, we need to stand up and say that's an oppression.
Definitely.
And if Muslims are committing that, then Muslims are wrong to commit that. When Yazid, a Muslim Khalifa, stood up, then it took the grandson of the Prophet to stand up and say, no, that Khalifa, regardless of the fact that whether he's a Muslim or not, is wrong. So if Muslims in Syria are doing that, it requires Muslims who are the followers and the sons of Zahra and Amir al-Mu'minin to stand up and say that's wrong.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing. And I think that as far as it goes, humanity will always take the easy option out. But it takes a true leader and it takes a true godly person to stand up and say that's wrong. We're all comfortable in our comfort zones. I'm sitting at home, there's no issue whatsoever, I'm relaxing. I don't want to stand outside in the cold and to stand up against someone. But you've seen that. Go 3 or 4 months ago when the issue of Kuwait took place and over 80 Shias were blown up in a bomb blast.
Yes.
What happened? The entire Pakistan was brought to a standstill. Why? Because Muslims came out, Shias, even in London, you saw.
London, yeah.
Baby was born, the next day father comes, it was -1, I remember that, I came off the plane, it was freezing, I was freezing, -1 temperatures, a father comes out with a child, he says no, enough is enough, and we're going to stand up for justice.
And also, I mean, we all remember about the most pathetic film was made about Islam. Pathetic, nobody even looked at it on YouTube.
Yes.
There were, Islam, the whole world of Islam was up and trying to defend.
Yeah.
Where is the Muslim world? 200,000 people are killed in Syria in less than 2 years. 200,000.
A million people displaced.
So where is the passion of the Muslims?
And in a way, like you're saying, we have the most perfect examples, and both in Christianity and Islam,
Absolutely.
which actually makes our responsibility far greater than anyone who isn't aware, because we know we have the role models there, we have their examples, we just need to do it. And this actually brings me on to my next point. And you mentioned something that in Karbala, all backgrounds were represented on that day. They were human beings who sacrificed completely, but it wasn't down to their faith, it was down to the equal humanity. In this day and age, in combating these issues that we're seeing, warfare, terror, etc., what's the importance of interfaith work in our communities here?
The importance of interfaith work is by the action we do together. And let's stop just meetings and on the top level giving lectures and all this.
Talk, yeah.
What we want is to go out there and raise the awareness of the people and ask them to rise to their responsibility, to rise to the importance of the time we live in.
Yes.
So that the challenge is not only for Muslims, is not only for Christians, is not only for the Jews, it's for humanity. What is happening in Syria is a shame, will be on the forehead of humanity. Not only Islam, not only Christianity, not only Jews, for humanity.
Definitely.
Because silence is not acceptable and shouldn't be an option. When I put my hand with the hand of Sayyid Ali, we are not putting our hands together because he is Muslim, I'm Christian. Because we are human and we are against injustice.
Absolutely.
And again, I just want to continue with that. I think that the role of interfaith is important, and as we've discussed on other shows as well. The thing is that, look, man is afraid of what he doesn't know. How do you remove the fear? You go into something, you delve into it. If we are living as human beings, what's the best thing we can do is to understand one another. If I'm going to support my brother, I need to understand him in the sense that he's a human being as well. Yes. We live in a cosmopolitan, diverse society. We don't even know our neighbors. And go back to our traditions, both within the Christian tradition and the Muslim tradition. Where's the love for thy neighbor? Where's that movement towards a neighbor? So I think this interfaith is important. It requires us to socialize with the other. But the important thing here is to accept diversity.
Yes.
It's not a matter of tolerance. Tolerance is a very negative word. It's a matter that you behave or you can do what you... but we live in peace and harmony. It's not about changing someone. I'm not going out interfaith because I want every single person to convert or something. No. I accept what you are. You accept what I am. Let's look at our commonalities. And more than that, let's build a friendship.
Yes.
As Father Nadim says, it's diversity. God created us diverse so that, as in the Quran says, so we understand one another. We come to know one another. Therefore, exactly. But Allah then says, what is the exception here? Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. So I think that we need to then have these events. And sometimes, before I used to think cup of tea, even if it's a cup of tea, because sometimes barriers are broken. When I share something with someone, at least there's a dialogue which is going on.
Yeah.
Small action.
Small action.
Just an action.
We make all the difference.
Not words only.
And so that's why I think education, like you're doing very well, CDs and seminars, educate people about the other person. Love and affection. They're human beings, they're normal people. Just like we have families, they're families.
I'd really like, like you said, we have many dialogues, we have many lectures, and I want the viewers to take from this show, I want them to take something from this show. I want them to have watched this and think, you know what, I'm actually going to actively go out and do that now. Because, like you said, talk is easy. It's when you actually put your actions to where your words are. So can I possibly ask you both to share either an inspiring story that you yourself have encountered, or an incident that you've seen, for example, with the UN International Day of Peace? What is it that incident meant to you, and how would you encourage people to do similar actions?
Well, there's a story that comes to mind remember we were discussing the idea of helping other people from a grassroots level.
Yes.
And so there's a person who's a BMP, from the National Front, racist. Son was paralyzed, son was disabled. And so one of our brothers went and he said, look, you know what, it's our responsibility to help. And we made an agreement amongst ourselves that we're going to help people, 10 people. So we had a scheme, we said, look, one of us will help 10 people. And we'll do it from a grassroots level. We won't publicize it. Change comes from the grassroots. It doesn't come from PR, big business and companies. So we went, for 10 of us. And that's it, just help 10 people. One person, and all you need to say is that my name, for example, is Muhammad, I'm a Muslim. Breaks the barriers down. That's it. We went to this guy, said, you need funding for your child? Here we are. Afterwards, you see the drastic change. He says, look, all this time I thought Muslims were bad. Now the fact that you've helped my disabled son means that there's some goodness in you. That's what, if there's no goodness in us after that, then. But anyhow, Muhammad, Muslim, that's it, left it at that. So I thought, no, it's that human touch. And we calculated it, that if I help 10 people and 10 people turn 10 people, in 6 chains, what you'll find is that 100,000 families will be affected. At least they will understand the movement of religion. Religion is a peaceful movement. As we said, love doesn't come from legislation. Love isn't something which is forced down your throat.
It pours out.
It pours out. So love is something which comes from underneath grassroots and pours out. Love is felt by the heart.
Apologies, we do have just a few minutes left. So, this show's gone so quickly. It's been such an interesting discussion with you both. Father, I'd like to give you the opportunity to please just share a story, either from your foundation, and we do have a couple of questions as well. So, if you can proceed with that.
Here, the biggest surprise for the people was that our programs are Christian programs. But in every program we have a Muslim scholar, at least one, if not 2 or 3, and a Jewish scholar, also sometimes more, to listen to the opinion of the other. So some feedback came to the foundation saying we haven't expected to listen to see somebody who's obviously Muslim talking in this way, and especially I remember in one incident which had huge effect in the churches. What Sayyid Ali said on the DVD, said in one of our DVDs, said, if you want as Christians to celebrate Christmas and Easter, do celebrate them, and we are not offended, because there is this lie here that if we Christians celebrate Christmas, that would, you as Muslims will be offended. And for a Muslim scholar to break this barrier, it was really, and the impact was amazing.
Well, that time in the Priory in Westminster, when the group of people who were, some of them off the road, and we'd heard from the person hosting it that these guys are going to be really, they're going to shove it down your throat, and they'll be very angry and aggressive. And when we got there, and we discussed basically our life and the way that Islam and Christianity, because we represent Islam and Christianity, the way that we were interacting, it broke all of those barriers down. And you remember how the crowd came up to us to yourself?
Absolutely, it was amazing. And one something very small could leave a huge impression.
Yeah.
We were also on TV, Sayyid Ali and I, and without noticing, without thinking, I stretched out my hand and I took his beads, and started praying, and he continued, and after a while, he stretched out his hand and he got the beads back, and we went to a session with the people around, and they rushed to me and said, "Father, it was so wonderful," because they didn't think that I, as a priest, would even touch the beads from an imam. So even gestures can break barriers and misconceptions. We live in misconceptions.
Yeah. And just to summarize what's been said there then, I said I'd really like the viewers to hopefully take something from this program and actually make an active difference yourself. And I mean, sitting in front of me are a perfect example, and it's beautiful to see the friendship that you have between each other, even though you're a Christian scholar and you are from the Islamic faith. And that is an example to all of us that within our own communities, it doesn't matter who you're with, if it's interfaith, etc., it should be encouraged, dialogue should be encouraged, and that mutual peace and tolerance, well, tolerance not like a negative word like you said, but acceptance almost, and working together is a beautiful thing. So it is the small things that matter, like you said. It's not necessarily going out there and trying to change the world. It could be even over a cup of tea. It could be getting involved with this initiative. So I'd like to bring the viewers to the attention of the Facebook page of the UN International Day of Peace. It is facebook.com/SEPT21. Please do check it out, and they have plenty of pictures and updates of events that are going on that you can possibly get involved if it's in your local area. And even if not, perhaps you can start thinking of an event you yourself would personally like to bring into the community and get your local communities involved as well. So I think that's all we have time for today. We did have some questions texted in from some of the viewers regarding Syria, but we don't have time, unfortunately, today to address those, and hopefully in a future show. So I'd like to thank you both, my guests, for a very interesting discussion. I've taken a lot personally from this, and I'm sure the viewers have too, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming and joining us. Inshallah, join us next week, and hopefully we'll have a similar show with a different topic. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.